There's already been rumors of U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza. These rumors are hard to confirm because typically you're going to get official sources like government lying. You're going to get media organizations being told by governments to lie. They are not going to tell you the reality of what they're actually doing. But there have been some Middle Eastern reporters on the ground saying U.S. special forces and Delta forces are operating in Gaza. Now, what we know is true is that there are special forces in Israel. But the statements, official statements, are that they're assisting with logistics and intelligence and identifying hostages. Sure. We now have this story. Biden administration holds secret talks on stationing American troops in Gaza after Hamas is defeated. But U.S. officials fear deepening political peril after Israel shelled a refugee camp. Holy crap, my friends. U.S. boots on the ground, formally in Gaza, I think would be apocalyptic. Yesterday, we saw Yemen's Houthi rebels strike Israel. Israel say they thwarted the attack, but it's an effective declaration of war. Let's be real. Iranian-backed rebel groups and militias don't like Israel as it is. So everyone's saying they've declared war. And I'm like, oh, come on, guys. Like they're basically in a state of perpetual war. However, fair point, it is serious escalation. And with this, the attack from Yemen, I don't know, like whatever you want to call the official Yemenis government. They say these are the Iranian-backed militia groups and Houthi rebels. It's looking like we may see some dramatic escalation. Now, at the same time, I want to stress this. We talked about it yesterday. Ukraine seems to be done. And the Ukraine war seems to be over. Russia won. Hey, we've been saying that for some time. The media lied every step of the way. And now it looks like Ukraine cannot maintain the fight and the U.S. doesn't want to fund it. Still, there's people like Mitt Romney. I believe it was Mitt Romney who was saying, we got to have a bill that comes in and gets funding for Ukraine. And it's just like, okay, look, man. You know why this is scary? The U.S. is damn good at losing wars. You take a look at Afghanistan. What a disaster. Iraq, sorry, still a disaster. Absolute disaster. Ukraine, what a disaster. Jeez. For whatever reason, they like to talk about how powerful the U.S. military is, and then we see all this conflict happening around the world, and we're like, y'all ain't doing too good of a job. How about we stop? But here we go. The next big story. Now, here's what I love. I like the Daily Mail's headline for having the exact quote, hold secret talks on stationing American troops in Gaza. Because the source story, this is what the corporate press does. They don't want you to know. U.S. and Israel wait peacekeepers for the Gaza Strip after Hamas. Excuse me? That's how you headlined this story? U.S. and Israel discuss U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza. Headline. Bloomberg writes, weighs peacekeepers. What does that mean? Multinational force could include American. Another option would put Gaza under United Nations oversight. How about you just call it what it is? The U.S. and Israel are exploring options for the future of the Gaza Strip, including the possibility of a multinational force that may involve American troops. You see how they so desperately try to downplay that Joe Biden, that the United States executive administration is discussing boots on the ground for American troops in Gaza. Listen, some might say, no, but that's not fair because they're talking about a multinational force. And yet, we are America. We are not the UK. It is not pressing for the American people. It is not of dire consequence if France sends in some peacekeepers. The fact is, we as Americans want to know where our soldiers, our men and women in uniform, are being sent and why. And now we can see the escalation of this. Now, I'll come back to this, but this one's important because this is from the Times of Israel from today. U.S. Special Forces said deployed to help Israel track down hostages held in Gaza. Senior Pentagon officials say commandos on the ground are aiding efforts to identify hostages, including Americans, according to the New York Times. The U.S. has sent special forces to Israel to assist in finding hundreds of hostages held captive in the Gaza Strip by Hamas. I gotta slow down there for you. What are they saying? It is confirmed. U.S. Special Forces are in Gaza. The United States has deployed troops into Gaza. Let me repeat that for you. The United States has boots on the ground in Gaza. Great. Why is it, you may ask, that the American people overwhelmingly reject war and foreign intervention, yet here we are finding ourselves again, once again, an administration without declaration, just going and doing it? How about we secure our borders? Okay, give me a leftist cause, universal health care. I would gladly shift all of that funding from conquest, war, boots on the ground, etc., into attempts at universal health care. You know, actually, I'm in favor of some kind of like universal basic healthcare system, but you got to have private supplemental insurance. But no. I mean, give me some like leftist free college. I hate college. I think it's a waste of time. But I tell you this, let's do it. Free college, ladies and gentlemen. All we got to do is stop putting our troops on the ground in these foreign countries in wars that we lose. So while they're discussing the future of U.S. boots on the ground in the region, understand we have boots on the ground already. To be fair, the reason why I draw a distinction here is special forces, much smaller numbers, right? And discussions of peacekeepers is a sustained occupation of the territory. I mean, I am but some humble man on the internet who complains about things, right? Are there things I probably don't know? Sure, but I do not see how you look at the history in the region, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff we don't know. I don't know how you look at the history of the region and think, I got an idea. Let's amass a massive U.S. fleet, 2 strike aircraft carrier strike groups, 21,000 personnel, and then send special forces on the ground with planning to physically occupy this region at a time when Hezbollah, when Yemen, when Iran, and many others are threatening escalation and war. Now, the U.S. has previously said it sent military advisors to help Israel in its war on the Hamas terror group. Christopher Meyer, an assistant secretary of defense, indicated that commandos have also been deployed, according to the report. Quote, "We're actively helping the Israelis to do a number of things," Meyer said at a special operations conference in Washington, Times reported. The comment came a day after Israel freed one of its soldiers who had been held by Gazan terror groups, though it was unclear what role, if any, the American commandos had in the rescue of Private Ori Magadish. Magadish was one of at least 245 people who abducted when thousands of Hamas terrorists, this we understand. Look, no, I get it. And I warned, and I was right. I'm going to say it again because when I'm right, I'm right. When I'm wrong a lot. But this is what I warned of when the hostages were taken. This is almost a month ago now. It's November 1st. Almost a month ago, I said, you take American hostages, we send dudes in a helicopter dropping down onto your building, and they kill everyone to free those hostages. This is a little known element of American foreign policy. No, but I really mean it. I mean, you might know, a lot of people might know, but the average person doesn't know this. When American hostages get taken, what happens? At 2 a.m, a helicopter comes down over the building. A bunch of dudes rappel down, night vision goggles, kill everyone, and rescue the hostages. Look, I know it's not always as movie-esque, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys who are involved in this kind of operations, but like, calm down, it's not that crazy. I know. I'm giving you the intense version that tends to be the case. Night and air superiority, night vision goggles. People, you got to understand, you get a new moon. It's pitch black outside. You're in the middle of nowhere. There's very little light, and you've got goggles on and you can see everything. You go in clean sweep. This is what the United States has been trying to tell. I shouldn't say trying. This is what they've literally been telling these terror groups and these extremist groups. If you take Americans, you will be purged and your family in front of your own eyes. This is what the U.S. does. And I'm not trying to say that the U.S. commits war crimes. No, I'm saying they'll storm in a building and take out anyone perceived as a threat, which often results in a dude and his kids being killed. I'm not saying little children. You got teenagers. Doesn't matter. They take American hostages, this is what happens. Perhaps, to be fair, a bit of an exaggeration, but that's the message that the U.S. tries to send, and that's why you probably get a lot of these stories. I'm sure it's not always as intense. They kick the door and they say, nobody move. They pull the hostages out. But my understanding is if you take American hostages, you typically die. You typically die. Yeah. So don't. This is a big issue with when I did the hostile environment training. I've mentioned this to you guys before. They said Spain and Germany, if you're a Spanish or German citizen, you're screwed because your government's going to pay. That means they seek you out. You are a target. If you're an American, they get worried. They're like, I don't want to take an American, dude. I don't want the guys in the helicopter coming special forces and just, you know what I mean? But here we are. One of at least 245 people abducted. Israel has vowed to destroy Hamas and free the hostages, while diplomats from Qatar and other countries have attempted to negotiate their release. Meyer, who was the Pentagon's senior special operations policy official, told the conference a key objective for the U.S. personnel is to identify hostages, including American hostages. It's really our responsibility to do so. All right, we got some challenges here, my friends. We got some big challenges. Here's the issue. Dual citizens. I do not believe U.S. Special Forces should be aiding in the rescue of dual citizens. I don't. I respect dual citizens, but look, let me clarify. It's not the dual citizen that makes it the point. The point is your capacity. If you were in Israel as a dual citizen, as a tourist visiting the Holy Land or whatever, and you get kidnapped, the U.S. should be working towards your release. But I do not know if boots on the ground is the right way to do it because of the fear of massive escalation in this war. I got to say, and I think it's fair to say, anyone, I've been to Tel Aviv. I'm not Jewish. I'm not a dual citizen. I'm just an American. And I went there for a conference like I've been to Morocco as well. I've been to Egypt as well. And were I to be kidnapped, I would be hoping and praying that I'm going to see a bunch of dudes in night vision goggles with high-powered rifles kick the door in and just pull me out. I would weep and I would hug those men for saving my life. Don't get me wrong. What I'm trying to say is to the people who are kidnapped by Hamas, American citizens, some tourists. Yeah, they're probably hoping and praying those commandos are gonna bust down the door and save their lives. And that's a tough call. It is. It's so easy for me to say in the comfort of my studio, home office with a skate park in the basement and a whole bunch of, we got these really awesome Spindrifts. Oh, the comfort we have. Spindrift sparkling water with real squeezed fruit. Yeah, the people who are taken hostage by Hamas don't have these luxuries and they want to go home. I can understand why they would be hoping and praying. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge. I don't know what to say. I really don't. To condemn someone and say, listen, you were taken by Hamas. You're in this foreign territory. And the risk of busting the door down to rescue you is World War III, is dramatic escalation. How can we do this? I don't know. We got to get the Americans out. That's the reality, man. What do you do? Now, here's the challenge with dual citizens. Some of these people that are in Israel that were captured and being held captive, they are Americans, but they were fighting for the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. Different story. I still respect that you're an American citizen, but if you are fighting on behalf of a country that is not America, and I don't know to tell you, man, I don't think we should risk escalation of war for the entirety of the United States because you chose to fight on behalf of someone else. What other country would we do this for? We might. But I think we got to draw that line, and that's where I draw the line. Right now, we have this from the AP. Yemen's Houthi rebels claim attacks on Israel, drawing their main sponsor, Iran, closer to Hamas war. Yeah, this is scary stuff. I think you guys need to understand something about this war. We saw that story I mentioned initially, that Israel has hit a dense Gaza refugee camp, and I see everyone saying this is a war crime. Here's the simple version of the story. Israel was targeting a Hamas commander. He was presumed to be hiding in a refugee camp, so they bombed that camp, killing civilians. That is unconscionable. And I don't have good answers for you. I really don't. I would say this. War is, I love that quote. People say war is hell. And then there's another quote. I forgot who it's by. Someone tweeted it. War is not hell. War is war. Hell is full of the guilty. War is full of the innocent. And it's just so brutal. Yep. Yeah, we don't want civilians to die. And at this point, excellent post by Martyrmade on Twitter. He says the strike on this camp is not collateral damage. Collateral damage, and some call it collateral murder, is when a civilian dies in as a byproduct of a military operation. So collateral damage is typically like the U.S. will strike a terrorist's HQ, and there will be like a few civilians in the surrounding area that get killed by it. But the civilians weren't the target. The refugee camp was the target. The argument they're making is, it's war, and they were targeting this commander, but civilians unfortunately died. No. Civilians, the refugee camp was the target. And so the argument now is it collateral damage or not? I don't think it's fair to say. If you know you've got hundreds of refugees and a guy hiding in the middle and you blow them all up, I don't think that's collateral damage. Collateral damage would be more like there's a vehicle driving down the road with a commander and you open fire on it and the bullets end up hitting property and people in a different area. Like you were intentionally trying to avoid civilian deaths. Civilians died in the process, collateral damage. But they'll argue that. But it doesn't matter. There's an excellent video by that's going viral of Ben Shapiro having a debate. Look, man, I know a lot of people, a lot of libertarians especially, don't like Ben, but Ben is not wrong. And factually, I'm saying. Morally, you're allowed to think so. But factually, he makes the point. In this war, Israel is killing civilians. And we want it to stop. But Hamas won't stop. You know, a lot of people are saying, we need a ceasefire. There was a ceasefire. And then Hamas broke it and killed a bunch of civilians. So Israel's responding by taking out Hamas. The argument is that Israel should be engaging in individual surgical strikes using commando teams. Easier said than done, I'd say. But I don't think that justifies bombing a refugee camp. But Ben Shapiro brings up something very important. The bombing of Dresden. And I think this is something everyone should know. The bombing of Dresden was a joint British and American aerial bombing on the city of Dresden, the capital of the German state of Saxony in World War II. In 4 raids between the 13th and 15th of February 1945, 772 heavy bombers in the Royal Air Force and 500 of the Royal Air Force and 527 U.S. Army Air Forces dropped more than 3,900 tons of high explosive bombs and incendiary devices on the city. The bombing and the resulting firestorm destroyed more than 1,600 acres of the city, and up to 25,000 people were killed. 3 more USAAF air raids followed, 2 occurring on March, aimed at the city's railway marshalling yard, and 1 smaller raid on the 17th of April aimed at industrial areas. Post-war discussions about whether the attacks were justified and the tens of thousands of civilians killed led to the event becoming one of the moral causes célèbres of the war. The present understanding of Nazi Germany's desperate struggle to maintain resistance in the closing months of the war is widely known. However, Allied intelligence assessments at the time gave a different picture. There was uncertainty over the ability of the Russian advance to keep up its momentum. Rumors of the establishment of a Nazi redoubt in southern Germany were taken too seriously. So my point is this. It's war. This is what you get. And that's why we hate and we don't want war. But the truth is, we're only telling this story because we won. That's it. Right now, what we're seeing between Israel and Gaza, Hamas, is a clash of Western sensibilities and war. And war crime is a meaningless statement. War crime. It's something that parents tell their kids at night to comfort them from and shield them from the horrors of reality. I'm kidding. Parents don't tell their kids about war crimes before bed. At least I hope they don't. But this idea of a war crime, it's PR. It is pure public relations. We don't commit war crimes. What is war? There is no earthly supreme authority. There is only those who can maintain it. Spiritually and in the heavens, we have our supreme authority. whatever you might define that as. For my more faith-based friends, Abrahamic friends, of course, you understand who that supreme authority really is in the divine sense. And for my secular friends, there is a supreme authority, and it is the rule of nature, the law of nature in the land. And guess what? In nature, the most brutal is the one that gets rewarded. Look at apex predators. Humans. The apex predator of this planet. And do we feel any punishment from anyone? No, we don't. When humans pollute, destroy, when they kill, capture, maim any other species, is there any authority within this great world ecosystem to say that humans have committed atrocities against pig kind? Of course not, because we wield the cleaver and there is no one to stop us. Now, of course, there are many who would argue that humans do commit crimes against these species. Whatever. It's a moral debate. And then we eat those species. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think it is good. We hold ourselves accountable to certain degrees because you shouldn't just go willy-nilly killing random animals. We do it for a purpose, typically. Either there's overpopulation, we're hungry, in need of furs to wear or trade, trapping and hunting, or culling dangerous species, things like that. But for the most part, we say, hey, don't kill random animals for no reason. And if it's endangered, you can actually get in serious trouble for killing certain animals. Why? Well, because we do understand we benefit. We benefit. But here's my point. The reality of war is that the winners, they'll write their history books and they'll justify what they did. The losers will have their say. It is not absolute that history is written by the victors. The losers do put out their stories too. And sometimes the atrocities are so intense, it doesn't matter who won. How about Sherman's March to the Sea? Scorched earth warfare. Now, a lot of people have said, they've commented, scorched earth is when you destroy your land to make sure the enemy can't use it. Yes, but typically scorched earth is a reference to an invading force destroying everything, massacring civilians, raising crops, destroying buildings so that the enemy cannot recover. What do we see with the bombing of Dresden? How many people are going to look back and say it was wrong at the time? This is the important point. If you don't know and you take action because you believe you must and you were wrong, what do? This is the challenge. It goes from the small scale to the large scale. I'm not here justifying anything. Of course, the left, this is propaganda and this is war. They're going to say it's justification. No, I'm explaining moral conflicts. A cop is told to serve a warrant on a murderer who is hiding away in an abandoned building. So what do? They come up to the building where the door is barricaded. This man is reportedly armed and dangerous, has killed and will kill again. They kick the door in. The cops move in. A man then emerges from the shadows and raises his hand. The cops say, no, and shoot him. Turns out it was a homeless guy who had also been in the building, and he was raising his hand to say stop, to put his hands up. But he put his hands forward, and the cops couldn't see if he was wearing gloves. And they thought this could be the murderer. This could be the guy they were after. So what happens? The left would have you believe that this cop should go to prison for this. It's a tragedy. The cop wasn't intending to kill anyone. Prison would not change these circumstances. And there's not much you can do. There's been arguments about less lethal rounds for the first volley from cops. And it's just like, then cops die. There is no simple answer. There is no childish, naive answer as to how you deal with these things. I was speaking with Cenk Uygur on the Culture War podcast, talking about George Floyd, and he got pissed. He said, no, it's racist no matter what. Don't defend him. I said, my question to you is, what do we do? What should we do? Simple question. I'm not saying someone's right, someone's wrong. I'm asking you what you think should be done. They don't want to hear it. They want simple, fairy tale answers to war. George Floyd was chewing a speedball behind the wheel of a car. So Ian Crossland brings this point up. What are the cops supposed to do? The cops got to stop him. It's true. Chewing a speedball, meth and fentanyl. And then what if he killed some kid? They'd be saying, why did the police stop him? There's no easy answers. And it's childish and naive to think that you can escape conflict without pain and suffering. Israel should not bomb a refugee camp. I think that is egregious. But Ben made this point. War. There's no easy answers. None. So here's a challenge for you. You live in a house in a suburban area. You have a rifle. Standard 5.56, let's say. Someone breaks into your house, and in the middle of the night, you grab the weapon available to you, which is your AR-15, 5.56. I mean, these are intense rounds. They travel, right? And let's just say it's just what you for whatever reason. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, no, you should have a different weapon. Like, the reality is the AR-15 is a widely popular weapon. A lot of people have them. 5.56, fairly standard. Guy breaks into your house. You hear a crash, and you go downstairs, and this man has killed your son, your 7-year-old son, and he is raising his weapon towards your 10-year-old daughter. There's no question what you would do. However, the bullets travel beyond this man and enter the home of another person, striking and killing a 43-year-old man, father. I cannot tell you there are simple solutions. You can make the argument, well, the guy should have had a handgun. He should have had frangible rounds. He should have had hollow points. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. You're allowed to have these weapons. You are responsible for what happens with what is beyond these targets. But the question is, what purpose is served by taking this man who fired on an intruder who killed his child, putting him in prison? Serious question. What should be done? I genuinely ask you. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can comment. Some may say he should go to jail. He's responsible. That's manslaughter. He should have known what was behind this guy and that the bullets would travel and enter another home. He should have had different weapons. He should have. Okay, yeah, perhaps. Then let's try it another way. Let's make it more extreme. Just because for moral question's sake, this man has a Glock 17, 9mm rounds. He hears a crash. He grabs his handgun from next to his bed, goes into the living room and sees his son murdered, and a man raising the weapon to his 10-year-old daughter. And this man is cool and collected despite seeing the death of his child. And he raises the weapon and immediately takes action and fires on this intruder who murdered his child. 9mm round goes through the window, enters the window of another home, striking a 43-year-old man, father, and killing him. He should have known there were people in this neighborhood. He should go to jail. What do you do? Honest question. I mean, I'm sure there's precedent. There's answers to these questions, and people might have good opinions. I'm not saying what Israel is doing is right. I'm saying that when it comes to war, there are difficult moral questions that sometimes are really difficult and hard to answer. Now, for me, I think the question is, what do we want to occur? This man was not intending to kill anybody, and someone died. The person who should go to prison for it, the person who should be held responsible, is the man who broke into the home and committed the crime in the first place, creating these circumstances. The man with the 9mm defending his family because his daughter was about to die should not be punished for it. Scale it up, baby. Scale it up. A neighborhood watch. Here's a crash. A man, he calls the neighborhood watch and says an armed group of violent extremists is attacking a house at the end of the street. So they grab their weapons, this time 5.56, and they go out and they find a family had been killed. And this angry mob is screaming, and they're armed. So what happens? A firefight. The bullets travel beyond the extremists, entering homes and killing a few innocent people. What do you do, man? Do we say, just let these people rampage, ravage, kidnap, and kill? This is the problem Israel is facing. And again, Israel should not have bombed a refugee camp. My point is, you've got to ask yourself where the moral lines are. That Israel could, perhaps. And I think that's a fair point. But Ben brings up something interesting when it comes to war. A group of people that wants to save hostages is not going to care about your civilians. This is a deep challenge and problem with war. But the reality of war is this. If your child is being held hostage, are you thinking about anyone else? If a man is holding your son, your 7-year-old son, at gunpoint, are you going to stop and think, well, he's going to kill my family, but there may be people behind him, so I better not take action? I don't know. I'm not comparing that to the bombing of a refugee camp. This would be more akin to a giant crowd of people and there's a murderer hiding among them, so you unload on the crowd. Yeah, you're going to prison for that. And that's another point. Israel doesn't have justification for bombing a refugee camp, and that's why everyone's really angry about it. But I'm speaking more plainly about the general war between Israel and Hamas. That Israel would target a school, and they say, we've warned them to get out. That's the challenge, man. There's going to be a lot of arguments over what analogies work and don't. This Hamas commander was not an immediate threat. He was a future threat. And so I don't see there's justification for bombing a refugee camp. But I think you need to understand, when it comes to war, the idea of war crimes is just a nice story to tell you that we're trying to be better, that we are the good guys. But Western sensibilities are clashing with war. If this was the other way around, if there were 2 million Jews isolated in the Gaza Strip, some people have told me, I said Palestine would wipe them out. They would have been executed a long time ago because the ideological differences. But some said, no, Tim, you're wrong. Palestine would have been invaded and crushed if they were doing this to Jewish people. Like, oh, okay, yeah, fair point. But I'm saying, like, right now, if Palestine was the occupying, was an occupying force with massive power and was bombing Israeli civilians, or I should say, if Israel launched rockets into Gaza, but Gaza had the power, Gaza would wipe out completely what remained of Israel. It is only because Israel has somewhat more Western sensibilities and support from Western nations that there is any kind of restraint. And the West says, don't kill people, don't do it. And right. But if you go back several hundred years and you look at if Israel really were genocidal colonizers, the way the left paints them out to be, there would be no Palestine right now. 1948 would have been the end of it. But I'm not here to adjudicate historical and generational conflict over Holy Lands, but just to make those points. And to wrap up with this, if U.S. boots go on the ground into Gaza after the destruction of Hamas, occupying this area, tensions will escalate. And that probably is an understatement. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.